Right, welcome back, and let me first welcome our guest, Dr. Mohamed Halim, Professor of Political Science. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
This is the first visit of our top diplomat, the highest diplomatic figure, to visit Syria and Turkey since 2011.
Yeah.
And it comes at the backdrop of this humanitarian crisis that rocked both countries, this devastating earthquake. Let me first take the message sent that our top diplomat is in Syria and Turkey.
Right, as you rightly have said, now that is supposed to be the first visit, high-profile visit actually, on his own. Yeah, the highest, of course, of course.
Of course, preceded by a phone call by President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi.
Yeah, at his own Excellency's directives. Yeah, yeah.
Yes, indeed.
Actually, I mean, being sent to there first, very much charged with one very much interesting and very much important diplomatic message, which is, in the first instance, actually, that is offering feelings of deep sadness and condolences for the bereaved ones, for those who had been badly injured, and in the meantime, representing His Own Excellency's sense of, in addition to condolences, his own feelings of speedy recovery for those who had been badly wounded actually under the debris and the ruined houses and establishments in Syria as much as in Turkey. Apart from this humanitarian message actually on the part of His Own Excellencies as being represented and challenged through, I mean, Mr. Sameh Shukri, there was, you know, I mean, the eternal song of Egyptian diplomacy, which is saving the other people in their own distresses, in their own moments of, you know, I mean, feelings of sadness at their own, moments of depression, actually. Immediately after, you know, I mean, the height of the earthquake, a couple of hours, actually, His Own Excellency, Mr. President of the al-Sisi, was in a hurry, actually, to make a sort of a very speedy phone call to both presidents, actually, in Syria as much as in Turkey.
Let me here take, our top diplomat was in Syria and in Turkey to convey the griefs and the condolences on behalf of Egypt's leadership and people to the Syrian and Turkish people. But the message that our top diplomat himself was the one who delivered the support, or what we have sent to both countries himself.
Well,
how do you read this message, particularly with what the foreign minister saying, or the statements of the foreign minister upon his arrival to Damascus and to Turkey at the same time?
First, condolences, expression of mutual identification, feeling the other people's distresses and helping them at their own
diplomatically.
Yes, this is in the first instance, diplomatic. An initiation on the part of the Egyptian presidency actually to try to drag and to attract the Syrian people as much as the Syrian presidency actually again to the Arab file, being very much alienated for quite a long period of time, isolated from the rest of the Arab world. Actually, Syria was very much, you know, I mean, lagging behind to a greater extent. That's why diplomatically, I think that Mr. Sameh Shukri's very essential diplomatic role and mission is to try to prepare the way for the second return of Syria again.
Actually,
this is part of his own
the foreign minister has said that it's a humanitarian visit at this stage.
And the first
that
instance
was in Damascus.
And
that support has to be extended to our Arab brothers. And that is and will always be Egypt's constant diplomacy. These were the statements by the foreign minister. But the visit itself signals what you respectively here said.
Signifies solidarity, signifies sense of belonging, sense of deep awareness actually of other people's interests, actually, and their own distresses, their own moments of anguish as well. This is in the first instance. Secondly, as I've just said, that it's in somehow or another one way of inducing, as much as inviting Syria, as much as the Syrian administration, actually, to try to be part of the Arab League as well. For, as you might know, that during the lapse of more than 10 years that Syria is being away, very much quite lagging behind, not very much belonging to the fabric of the Arab people, away from the Arab summits and the Arab League, actually, very much not communicating itself as an Arab country in the first instance because of the, you know, the problem of the Golan Heights and a large number of internal disputes and tussles and struggles, actually, that may deviate Syria, actually, from the Arab track. So I think that Mr. Samah Shukri, apart from the humanitarian and human, you know, I mean, message of which he was to be charged at the directives of His Own Excellency, Mr. President Fattah Sisi, apart from saving the other people and representing and striking a very good example for almost not only the Arab world, but almost for all the world at large, particularly the Western world, that the Arab nation is very much solidified, very much propagating sense of belonging, very much thinking actually of not, you know, I mean, interfering within the other people's affairs as much as attentive now and again actually on His Own Excellency's part actually to try, as I've just said, you know, I mean, make Syria being again, assume the sort of the role that it has once before, that is being part and parcel of the Arab fabric actually, being a permanent member within the Arab League, sharing the other people's interests actually, and this sort of heads of sudden catastrophic, disastrous earthquakes actually, and their own aftershocks actually would represent a great deal of examples actually to be learned actually for almost the whole world, that the Arab nation and very much belonging to one another, that no need actually that any one single individual sort of country being very much deviated from the other. And I think Egypt did strike a very good example, not only helping Syria at this particular stage, because in the first instance, since quite more than 9 years actually, we are in the habit actually as Egyptian diplomacy, as presidential authority, of saving and of, you know, I mean, pushing a hand of, helping hand actually to the Syrian refugees. The fact that more than about 2 million Syrian guys actually are living here on an Egyptian territory, not in tents, not in camps actually, not in refugee camps, but as owners of shops, of restaurants, as very much remunerative businessmen and women actually, practicing their own simple rights as much as any sort of an individual indigenous citizen of Egypt is, or maybe.
Yes, indeed. Egypt has no refugees.
We don't have that sort of thing, actually. Yeah.
This important visit was preceded by another important as well, one by the Parliament Speaker Hanafi El-Gibali to Syria. Yeah. In which he spoke about the particular historical relations with Syria and conveyed a message of support to the great Syrian people and wishing them, of course, prosperity and welfare and all that. How does this reflect Egypt's constant foreign policy, particularly towards our brothers, and constant policy towards dealing with countries at catastrophes?
Well, not only Mr. Samah Shukri as a high-profile diplomat, but actually, I mean, the chairman of the House of Representatives, as you might have said right now, that is Dr. Hanafi El-Gibali, actually being very much interested of attending and of delivering a very important distinguished speech, not only in Syria, but actually in Iraq, because it was supposed to be held actually in Iraq on Saturday and extended to Syria today. I mean, delivering his own very much important word that not only Egypt, but almost all the Arab countries are very much collaborating in sending ships and sending, you know, medical aids and pharmaceutical instruments and, you know, I mean, professional doctors and surgeons actually to try to help those people in distresses, actually. So, I mean, on both levels, on the official level, as much as on the grassroots level, as actually, there is a great deal of interest on the part of our own parliamentary figures, actually, as being headed by Dr. Hanafi Gebali, representing his own deep awareness and very much charged, as much as Mr. Sameh Shukri is, with another humanitarian sort of message that should be delivered at moments of distress, actually, that you're not there being alone for yourself, to yourself, by yourself, actually, but you are sharing here with almost all our own means at our own disposal as Egyptian diplomacy, as Egyptian presidential authority, a sort of help, providing you with almost all your own daily needs, attempting every now and again to save those lives, whose, catastrophic occasions actually would put them under residues as much as debris and demolished houses and residences, actually, and in the meantime representing in the first instance the sort of the human and humanitarian message that should be sharing those people as very much brotherly countries, being very much connected and tied actually to the Egyptian infrastructure and the humanitarian aid in the meantime.
Definitely Egypt has already, just after the quake, right after the quake, Egypt was one of the first to send to Syria the rescue team for, of medical specialists and rescue technicians.
Yeah.
Alongside the medicine aid, and same was the case also to Turkey. How do you view how Egypt has dealt so far with, I mean here that Egypt's one of the basic principles of the Egyptian diplomacy was keeping peace and security, or to preserve the peace and security of the world, plus dealing with crises. How do you view so far the Egyptian role in this regard?
Well, I mean, that sort of role is not supposed to be played for the first instance. In the first instance, I would say, not only to be exemplified by the sort of humanitarian and humane aid, actually, and the sending of, the act of sending technicians, surgeons, and doctors to both Syria and Turkey, but actually it had been clarified and had been attested to. I mean, a couple of years ago, still remember the wide devastation of the pandemic of the COVID-19, when it was to be very much spreading here, there, and everywhere, with a toll deaths that would reach to millions and millions east and west. Egypt had always been there, actually, providing medical aids, masks, vaccinations, large number of vaccines, actually, even to India, to China, to Sudan, and to Libya, to Lebanon, attempting every now and again, actually, to play the role of the distant role that it was to be charged with, which is helping the other people. That is the destiny of Egypt, actually, being situated at the heart of almost every single individual citizen, no matter he or she may be, actually. That is the sort of the role that Egypt would occupy since quite thousands and thousands of years. It had been testified to and attested to by the Palestinian cause before, interfering every now and again in the interests of the Palestinian people, of the establishment of the Palestinian state, representing the two-state solution, as much as Libya, in Yemen, in Syria, in Iraq. That is the sort of the permanent and everlasting role that Egypt is to be charged with, actually, that is saving other peoples during their own moments of distresses and tribulations, actually. And that sort of thing had been exemplified by the very much quick and very much sort of interference on the part of the presidential authority to both Syria as much as Turkey. Apart from the fact that, the diplomatic sort of breach and diplomatic alienation that had been there between Turkey and Egypt for quite some time, perhaps since 2013. Apart from this and that, apart from the stoppage and the sort of the season of the consulatic ties between Egypt and Turkey, on the other hand, Egypt was the first Arab country, actually, to try to, help the Turkish people, stemming from the fact that not only as being very much sharing the same religious beliefs as Muslims, as Sunni people, but actually as very much practicing the song of humanity, actually, as human beings of real flesh and blood that are in distresses, actually, and it's in the interests of Egypt actually to try to save them at these moments. Apart from Syria, I think that Turkey would seem to be quite, for quite some time not propagating very good ties with Egypt. We have had
But we've heard together today the statements of the Turkish foreign minister or the...
Yeah. It became part of the past, actually. The inimical history, the sort of the breach in the diplomatic relations, being part of the past, actually.
And by the way, those were not the first statements said by the Turkish side on trying to
and the inaugural words and inaugurative speech?
In a trial to get closer to Egypt and to retrieve or to normalize more and more relations. These were not the first words, but these were really said just at the visit of our top diplomat.
Well, I'm just talking about identifying the previous history of enmity that was once before, but by that sort of visit, without any preliminaries actually.
No, this is humanitarian visit.
In the meantime, it has got a diplomatic side actually.
Definitely, but on stages. And here we're speaking about how Egypt stands by all the world in matters of crises, particularly, of course, our brothers, and of course all the world at large, part of the constant foreign diplomacy of Egypt. It's open to the whole world based on mutual respect.
Very true. Yeah, that's true.
And non-interference in the domestic affairs of other countries.
Well, apart from the humanitarian aids and the sort of the human need, actually, apart from all these loving kindness, I would really stress the diplomatic necessity, actually, of being very much able to communicate with other people as much as the sort of the visit that Mr. Sameh Shukri actually would signify in today's visit. And so far as, we, as I've just said, that we both were Muslims, we are Sunni, and in the meantime, I think that Turkey did strike a very good example of brotherly relations and very good ties, actually, when it would stop and end those inimical social platforms in much of the same way that during the course of the previous 2 months, actually, it was in the habit of delivering and extraditing those activists of those stand Muslim Brotherhood activists, actually. This is one sign to my own understanding of its own goodwill, of its own ability to normalize, as you might have said right now, the sort of the relations. Both of the countries are very much in a dire need for each other, particularly under the sort of the onslaughts of the Russian-Ukrainian war, the shortage of food and the shortage and the lack of energy and the maximization of the wheat prices, of the grains, and of the diplomatic tussles between more than one country.
And that is one story that we will be speaking about, particularly when President Sisi spoke to the Ukrainian
absolutely true.
president and spoke of means to calm down the situation or ways to do that. Before we continue on with our discussion, let's first have this report and we'll come back for more discussion.